Hi, welcome back to the Young Entrepreneur Experience. My name is Gabriel Quimpo. I'm your host for today. I'm joined with my co-host Vedant Sinha today, and we are interviewing Clarissa Hong of BoxedTrends. So, just to jump right into it, what inspired you to start up your business?
So I've always been super into clothing and fashion, and it's just been a huge passion of mine. And yeah, that's basically the basics of it. And I've always been into like writing and art, and I just found a way to put together my passions and hobbies and translate that into clothing.
So for yourself, like what was the most difficult process in taking your passion and turning it into a business? What was the most difficult process you felt, or what was the most difficult obstacle you felt you had to overcome to start your business?
So there was a few obstacles that I faced. I think standing out is definitely one of them since when I first started embroidery was not a very saturated market. Like not first of all, to start an embroidery business, it costs a couple $1,000s, which is a lot for like high schoolers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I first started, there weren't that many people like who had the machines that I had. And but then like right now it's a very saturated market since like everybody is doing it, you know, so you really have to stand out, and it oftentimes costs more money to stand out, you know, like um a starting machine is around like 700 to 1,000, but I had to upgrade to a multi-needle in order to, I guess, again stand out, being like I offer the same price point as other accounts, but I'll give you industrial level quality.
I like just a quick follow-up question. As like we've interviewed a lot of artists on our podcast, and like one of the big things that we've been hearing is that like social media has really changed the game, especially for the arts. And like it's crazy for you to tell us that like the one of your biggest expenses now, instead of just starting up the business itself, is just getting yourself out there and making yourself stick out.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is just like, how do you feel? How do you feel that social media like really just like benefited your business, or what are some strategies that you used in like sticking out for yourself?
For me, I've always been really into marketing and consumer psychology. So I guess a tip I would use for people who are selling themselves online is to, as a producer, you have to think like a consumer. So I use my consumer habits, like, oh, I'm more inclined towards the color green, or the color red pushes an urgency. Like I need to check this item out now, you know, or it might not be there the next day. So as a producer, I also think like a consumer. And I think social media has had a major impact on my business, especially since most of my traffic does come from social media like TikTok or Instagram or like Facebook ads. And for me, the most beneficial platform so far has been TikTok, but Instagram Reels has also really helped me blow up my business.
Mhm.
Would you say, because we know that you started your business up in 2019, and right now, like these two like years, you've gained over 20,000 followers. For that interest in consumer psychology, did that interest like lead to you learning more about consumer psychology and like you reading up on it, or did you just go from where you knew?
So basically, I started around my sophomore year in high school. I was literally like selling stickers to people at break, like the 10-minute break we had at school, just meeting them at the lunch shelter, being like for $1 or so. And I was saving up for a MacBook at the time, so I was a photographer, and I really needed a new MacBook because my old one was having a hard time running the Photoshop and Lightrooms and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I did that, but then um, next year, my junior year, like COVID hit. So I was like, oh shoot, I can't sell in person anymore. So I guess I moved towards clothing. But then my junior year, I was also taking AP psychology. And then the chapter that interested me the most was consumer psychology and all the different techniques that different salesmen used. And I kind of applied that onto my business. And yeah.
It's crazy. You took classroom experience and actually like applied it to the real world.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of rare to hear.
Yeah. Like I feel like there's so many like since we're like both in like college, like there's so many majors where there's a lot of stuff and a lot of fluff. And I think it's like a really cool skill that you have that you realize that this is something that could definitely help me in what I want to accomplish. And you realize that I should be like applying this concept. So I think that's a really big thing I feel with like entrepreneurship, especially at our age, is that we're learning a lot of things and there's a lot of lessons that are being like taught to us, whether it's like in a classroom, whether it's in real life. And I think that the whole idea is that if you're not like learning or listening from that, and if you're not able to take that and use it, then your success as an entrepreneur might be very tenuous and all that thing. So I think it's really crazy that you just like I remember taking AP psychology in high school, and I was like, oh yeah, consumer science. And I think it's just crazy that you're just able to apply it so well. That also brings me to my next question. So you mentioned before that you use consumer science to kind of pick out which designs are better, and like you mentioned that a little bit before. So how do you go about picking a design, and what separates a good design for you from a bad design?
Okay, so for me, I have a very certain personal aesthetic, and I remember growing up, I didn't find a lot of the designs I liked on like hoodies at like H&M or Paxson, and if they were like 90, $100, you know? And so how I pick out a good versus bad design is how unique it is, because I know like everybody right now is doing like what you like Nike or like other like just literally there's like a Nike, you know, and I feel like there are hundreds if not thousands other sellers who are selling the exact same product. And but then like a very popular product for me are my fruit cows, you know, like they're like a strawberry cow, blueberry cow, but with like X'd out eyes with my logo and everything. And I haven't seen anybody else do that until I did them, and then it started getting more popular around other people, so I have to like make a new line or like a different product that people haven't seen before. So a lot of it is based off popularity, and also I guess whether the design fits the overall aesthetic for my brand. And yeah, that's kind of about it. And also understanding trends, you know. So like I guess TikTok is a huge trend, and so maybe you can jump on a TikTok trend. You know, I remember like I don't know if you know about the woman in Venom trend.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, there were people making like embroideries of it. So that's an example of jumping on a TikTok trend and also being able to profit off of it while creating relevant content for your audience.
That's really cool. And I like it's crazy. I love your business idea, like how you applied your own individual aesthetic, and that's like really like carrying the success for you over. I was just like wondering, so you mentioned that like TikTok was a huge like social trend and now everybody's hopping on it. So how social media or what sort of social media tactics do you implement so that like your like social media strategy is really good? And you mentioned like TikTok, but what about like other websites such as like Facebook, if you're on that, or like Instagram?
I don't really use Facebook other than Facebook ads, but that's run through Instagram, so I'm not really sure if it counts as Facebook. So I'm mostly going to talk about Instagram and TikTok. A thing I learned on TikTok is the 80/20 rule. So 80% of your, or not TikTok, but like your content in general, 80% should be more relaxed. You're not trying to be like, this is product A for this price. You know, you should be more like, this is how I style my items, or this is how, this is the gift that I think would work super well if you're looking for an anniversary gift or you're looking for a birthday gift. It should be less salesy and more like low key, I guess. And 20% of your content can really just be like 100%. This is the product and this is the price, you know, so it's not too salesy. And another thing that I recommend for your social media presence is to be more personal, like show your face, show behind who's behind the brand, who's designing it, and give it like sometimes you can also stray away from business. You'd be like, hey guys, here's just a how I live a day-to-day life as a high school student and also an entrepreneur at the same time. So like at 8 a.m. I'd be like, oh, I hate class, you know. And then at like 1 p.m. I'd be like, oh, I have track practice. And then at like 6 I'll be posting like, oh, so here's how much embroidery I got done today. Or just be super transparent online so people are able to put a face to your brand and not just have it leave at the brand.
As far as like I know, this is like this is a one person operation, right? Like
Yeah, for the most part, when I know, like, when I'm, I guess, blowing up on TikTok, which is not super often, but I remember one time I got like a video at 1 million views, and I had over 1,000 sweatshirts to make. I hired one of my friends, just one of them, and I just like paid her hourly to come work with me. And when it's super super hectic, I also have an assistant. Her name is Ida, and she would just do all the social media aspects of it, like responding to emails. And especially when a ton of people are placing orders at the same time, people are like, oh, I ordered in the wrong size, can I change it? So she'll go into Shopify and leave a little note for me to make sure to change it from like a size small to a size like large.
Wow, that's a crazy amount of skill, especially for like your age and like delegation and like management.
yeah.
No, but like that's crazy that you're like at the like I've studied business for a very long time, and one of the like the big things I realized is making sure you have a good team and also making sure you're able to lead it. And it's crazy that in like the social media world that it still rings true today, because I always wondered what would happen when like a smaller like art account blows up on TikTok and they just suddenly get a lot of orders, because it seemed like crazy to me, because like in TikTok it's so easy to get viral, and like it's just like I think that like it really opens the world for like a lot of these like artists and stuff like that. And I was just wondering, since you've come a far, like a long way in your entrepreneurship journey, what were some things that you wish you knew before you started as an entrepreneur that you know now?
Um, so off the top of my head, taxes. Keep every receipt and expense. So it makes doing taxes at the end of the year. I have a CPA, so I basically have to keep all my expenses, and I just give it to him, and he's like, "All right, I'll make sure you don't get audited by the IRS." And it's like, okay. Another thing is product photography. Your product is only as good as you make it seem. So you're like laying your clothing down on the floor with like bad lighting and just taking a picture being like $20, take it or leave it. Like you're less likely to get sales off of that, even though it's the exact same item, than if you were to style it with good lighting so people can really see it like on a person. And another thing is, again, brand transparency. I used to not really like talking like on my stories, like showing my face and everything, more just being more impersonal. But I've found a greater fulfillment and connection to my audience once I became more personal with them. And time management, major time management. I used to get stressed off selling like 20 stickers a day, and now I got like 20 sweatshirts to make a day. So it's like definitely I needed to like up my game and being like holding myself accountable, because right now as a senior it was very hectic with like college and like getting my classes done, and while also doing like cross country and track and competitions and all that stuff. So I really had to stay on schedule.
That's really helpful for anybody like that's watching. Hopefully they take these tips into consideration if they want to start their own business just like you. I understand that.
Sorry, I also
Oh,
have one more thing to
yeah,
add.
yeah,
Major like point of advice: be original. A lot of people like have short-term success just copying off other people. Like, yeah, maybe you might get one or two sales copying from another artist, but in the long run it's really not going to do you any good, since people are not going to associate your brand with who you are and being like, oh yeah, that's the account that does things like this account, but I often get them mixed up. But I want people to understand that in order for your brand to become distinguished, you need to have a unique, like a niche aesthetic, so it really makes yourself stand out.
No, wow. All I gotta say is we definitely got like a future Fortune 500 person like on our podcast. But yeah, this is like really great. I just this question just came up right now in my head. So I was wondering, so you mentioned a lot of like in like our conversation about social media, do you use any metric tools or any social media metric tools at all?
Um, I'm gonna assume metric tools are like analytics.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any specific ones. I guess let me check my Shopify for my apps. Um, yeah, I don't really have, other than like the Shopify analytics. I don't really have a specific thing that like external app that tracks other data. Because I feel pretty fulfilled by what Shopify already gives me. For example, it tells me like the total sales and everything, returning customer rate, total orders, average order value, and like online session stores by location, top products of units sold, and like what page people look at the most and their time spent. So I don't really feel the need to have an extra app since Shopify already gives me all this like data.
I mean, like that's really smart. I know tons of people who just like, especially in like B2C companies, like what they would do is that they'll have like a whole other service attached to their business, so that like they are tracking their social media data. And then like obviously like if you could time it well with programs such as like Shopify, you could really like learn a lot from the metrics that they provide. So I thought that was really interesting how you're able to like see that and like able to like take that away and be like, okay, this is some like metric data that I can use, and that like if I learn from this, I'm able to like expand my business.
A lot of the analytics also comes from just thinking about where my customers come from without looking at analytics. So for example, if I post a TikTok and it gets like 1,000 views, which is not too much, but like it's 1,000 people who looked at the video, maybe 2 to 10 orders will come from it. And all of the orders will relate to the video. For example, like my I love you sets, I'll get like a couple orders with that. And I know it came from that. Like not for sure, but I have a very good idea about where it came from. And I'm able to look through my videos and be like, oh, this one had a higher conversion rate than this one. So I'm able to recreate it with like maybe a different product or different audio or different transitions.
Oh, wow, that's like it's really interesting. No, it's like it's crazy that you're like you're just graduating like high school and you're just able to do all this stuff. Like I remember when I was in high school, that was where the phrase where everybody that was like the phase where everybody was trying to get into like clothing. Remember all the brands that people were trying to release or their own personal brands? And I think like one of like the biggest like failures of like a lot of people that did that during like my time is that they weren't taking such a concentrated effort into it. And I think that's like really cool that you're doing that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, I feel like a lot of people did it for money. Like I also have people at my school who like made an Instagram account being like launching June 1st, and it's like 3 years later, and I'm like, where's the clothing? And like like I'm friends with some of these people, like, oh, are you ever gonna release it? And the number one thing that they always say is like, "Oh, I just got too lazy, you know. And I feel like you shouldn't start a business off of whether you need income. I guess like if you need income, you should probably like start a business, but it shouldn't be the sole reason why you started your business. For example, I started mine last July. I had like barely 1,000 followers, but I knew I really like clothing, and I did it because I enjoyed it. And a number one thing that I go off of is money should be a byproduct of my passion, and not the other way around. Like whether I'm making $10 or $10,000, I'm still going to be making clothing because that's just what fills my soul. And that's what I started with. I started with like, I wasn't making a lot of money off of it, but I felt happy doing what I was doing. Like I remember making my very first sweatshirt being like, Dad, I made this, like I drew it and then I put it on clothing and I did it. And that for me is like genuinely priceless.
No, you mentioned like that you actually said something really wise right here. Like if you want money, you could just get a job. Like you don't have to put yourself out there at put yourself like when you're taking an entrepreneurship or when you're starting a business, you're putting yourself at risk, regardless of anything, whether it's time, money, anything like that, or like energy, like you're putting yourself at risk. And I feel like a lot of people our age, because with the rise of like social media, with the rise of TikTok, and especially with the rise of like consumerism and all these other things, everybody is like, let's start a business. Let me start a business. And I feel like one of the big things and one of the main drivers for that shouldn't be money. And I feel like you really hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, because even like before I had clothing, I was always really into writing, and I'm a very creative person. Like I have a lot of creative energy, and I just needed to have an outlet for it. And I also feel like a lot of people think they need to start a business by, like, they'll see what I have right now, like 1 year after I started my business, be like, oh, she has a $16,000 machine. I can't afford that, therefore I can't start a business. But I didn't start with that machine. I started with a little $700 one. And yeah, I also have like people accuse me being like, oh, your parents bought everything for you. I'm like, I literally started at $0 selling stickers, and then I saved up for a machine. So
It's
yeah,
a hustle. Like you literally like hustled for it.
yeah.
Well, like actually, let me ask you this like question. Did your parents have any pushback on you starting your own business like that? What were their thoughts? Just because like since we were all like around that age, like what were their thoughts on
I've
it?
actually had, I have another business I had in seventh grade. Um, so I worked that until like sophomore-ish year, and then I gave it to my brother since I like got really swarmed with the clothing and everything else. So they've always known that I call it business blood, you know, because my dad does the same thing I do, but at a larger scale and not clothing. Like he sells like tools and stuff. He's like also e-commerce. My mom worked 10 years as a human resource manager at an e-commerce company. So I was constantly surrounded by this idea of what business meant and also like the risk that came with it. But when it comes to like money, I'm very fortunate that my parents trust me with everything. Like my dad has never ever questioned me, like, why'd you spend thousands of dollars on his machine? Because he knew that if, because it was 100% my money, you know, like I wasn't borrowing any of his. So he trusts me, and like if it doesn't work out, then that's your fault, Clarissa, you know. But he also has a lot of trust in me because he's seen how I've managed my money and my time and my investments, and he's always seen it pay off. So that's, my parents have always been super supportive. But the number one thing my parents hate is that I don't sleep. So that's about it. That's
I
the
think
only
it's
like,
just
I mean, that's reasonable.
yeah.
yeah.
No, that's like this is an amazing story, Clarissa, and this is like box trends. I could tell is going to go off, and you really had like such a crazy entrepreneurship experience just with like how you were very just smart with how you went about things. You really hustled and you grinded your way through it. So wow, like it's just crazy just hearing the story. Like Gabe just told me that like he just showed me your account and it was like I was like, oh, some like really like maybe like a 24-year-old, somebody like a little bit older that's just like working on this stuff. And then he said, oh, she's going to be going to college next year. And I'm like, wow, like it's crazy that you're able to like just like actually actualize a lot of these things and like understand that there's a big risk associated with entrepreneurship. And I feel like that's the biggest thing is that life and like especially in business is it's just risk. There's a
Yeah.
risk with like whatever you do.
That's
Mhm.
like everything. The higher the risk, the bigger the return, but also like it could go the other way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just being smart. You know, you don't want to jump in and get the biggest setup you can get just because you've seen other companies be successful with big setups doesn't mean you need a big setup to start, you know. Like I remember for the first few months I was literally, I didn't have an iPad or anything, so I couldn't like draw my designs. I was on like Photoshop on my trackpad for like hours just like doing a little like drawing a design. And I remember I drew a fish and I'm like, Dad, I drew a fish.
No, but no, that's crazy. Like how you just started from like stickers and now you have a whole operation going.
Hmm.
But yeah. Let's see. Gabe, do you have anything else you want to ask?
Yeah. I think like going forward, what do you see from the company?
So I'm still 17, and my dad and I have been talking to legalize the business, you know, and but then if I do it right now, I'd have to have it with a partnership with my parents, you know. So, but then, or I can write it out till I'm 18, um, and have full, like I had to get an LLC and everything, and get my seller's permit and all that stuff, which is just a whole nother thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, right now I'm going to college for kinesiology, which is totally unrelated to what I'm doing right now. But it's just like I've worked at a student athletic trainer at my school for around 3 years. So I know I don't hate it, but I'm definitely not as passionate about it than what I'm doing right now. But again, it's all about being smart. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. You know, business is all about risk. And right now, the next decision I'm making is whether I completely switch majors to like marketing and like fashion. Because I don't want, okay, here's the thing I tell everybody. I only have one life. I don't want to be like 30 years old and massaging a broken athlete for physical therapy and wishing that, I was like, man, I could have done clothing and fashion. You know, like I'm just going to be thinking about that all day, which is why I'm leaning towards switching, you know, but it's definitely like a major switch. And it's the whole reason why I'm going to Long Beach is because of their kinesiology program. And it was like, it's like a total like 360 for me.
No, that's
or
really
180. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. But the dream is for BoxedTrends to be able to support me for the rest of my life and not just work an office job, you know, because I feel like everybody is just stuck working an office job, and I want to be able to do something else.
No, that's like legitimate. Like I feel like you're gonna have a lot of success and like whatever you do. I would say that like if anything, you should do what you want. You know, like you have one life, but also you're 17. You know, so I think like the pace of everything, it seems like it's going really fast, but like you're gonna look back like maybe a year or two from now and be like, I'm really satisfied with some of the decisions I made. I'm not so satisfied with some of the decisions I made, but at least I'm this far in life. And I think that's what's really important. And I think this is a good time to end our podcast. So thank you, Clarissa Hong, for joining us today. Go to BoxedTrends on Instagram and check out her like Instagram and definitely buy some of her stuff. She has a lot of really cool things. And thank you. And this is the Young Entrepreneur Experience. Gabe, the host for today, and I'm your co-host, Vedant Sinha. And thank you guys for listening to us.
Thank you.
Stop the recording.